If there's one thing that's become crystal clear over the last decade of NBA basketball, it's that the league is now completely driven by analytics. Every decision, roster moves, play style, even contracts is dictated by numbers. Teams are essentially playing a real-life video game where this shot is worth 1.5 more than that shot.
Very hard.
This shot is worth 1.5 more than this shot.
No one has shaped this data revolution more than Daryl Morey. His philosophy, now known as Morey Ball, has revolutionized the modern NBA by emphasizing three-pointers and layups while diminishing the importance of mid-range shots. The idea is simple. Crack the numbers, and you crack the game. Many would argue that this numbers-first approach makes the game too predictable, draining the excitement. But for teams chasing wins, analytics rule. If the data says it works, nothing else matters. And then there's Jimmy Butler, who refuses to play by the numbers. At 35 years old, the Warriors star is a glitch in the matrix of modern basketball. He's a below-average three-point shooter. He doesn't have elite length. If you looked at his stats alone, you'd think he was just another role player. By today's metrics, he shouldn't be this good. But somehow Butler keeps breaking the algorithm. Every team he touches turns into a contender. And in 2025, he's rewriting the script again, turning the Warriors from a league-wide afterthought into a legitimate threat. "We know who Jimmy is," Curry said. "He's gone to 2 finals, is a winner, has a lot to prove, and we're going to try to help each other do that." The question stands, how is Butler doing this? Why don't his numbers reflect his impact? Is Jimmy Buckets exposing the limits of NBA analytics? Before the 2025 trade deadline, the Warriors were in serious trouble. They were dropping game after game. Steph Curry was clearly frustrated, and the team looked like it was slowly falling apart. The Golden State Warriors 2024-25 NBA season seemed to be over. Warriors fans were desperately searching for answers, but nothing seemed to make sense. Some believed the Warriors needed another top 20 player next to Steph. Others thought they needed a true point guard and floor general. And then there were those who felt it was time to blow it all up and rebuild. You need to rebuild, and you need to blow it up, and you need to be drastic whatever it is that you do, because that's the only way that you can potentially hit on something that's going to point you in the right direction.
You need to rebuild, and you need to blow it up, and you need to be drastic, whatever it is that you do, because that's the only way that you can potentially hit on something that's going to point you in the right direction.
In the end, the Warriors landed Jimmy Butler, a player who through 25 games with the Heat this season was averaging just 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, numbers that wouldn't even get you into the All-Star game in today's NBA. If that wasn't bad enough, according to 2K, Jimmy wasn't just outside the top 20, he wasn't even top 40. Jimmy Butler was ranked as just the 48th best player in the league. On paper, this team should have collapsed, but instead, the exact opposite happened. They won 10 straight games that Jimmy Butler's played in, so pretty much every locker room with Jimmy Butler I've been in postgame is a winning locker room.
They won 10 straight games that Jimmy Butler's played in, so pretty much every locker room with Jimmy Butler I've been in postgame is a winning locker room, which is also...
Butler fittingly played his first game with the Warriors in Chicago, where his NBA career started as a member of the Bulls, and on the one-year anniversary of the tragic passing of his father. He helped the Warriors to a 21-point win, despite at one point trailing by as many as 24 points. Butler scored 20-plus points in his first 3 games, joining Wilt Chamberlain and Kevin Durant as the only Warriors ever to accomplish that feat. Even after joining Golden State, Jimmy's effective field goal percentage dropped to 47.3%. For context, Russell Westbrook gets criticized for his inefficiency, and yet Jimmy was now in the same category. But the Warriors were still winning because of him. By all accounts, this made no sense. If the numbers were the ultimate truth, how did the Warriors go from rock bottom to dominance overnight by adding a player the stats were against? Butler's defying everything the modern NBA is built on, the idea that numbers dictate success. So that begs the question, if the numbers are lying, what's the truth? There are things in basketball that numbers will never capture, instead of just telling you, let me show you with stories. In the 2020 NBA Finals, the Miami Heat were already huge underdogs against the Lakers. And then in Game 3, it got even worse. They lost Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic. their second and third best players. At that point, this wasn't just an uphill battle, it was like climbing Everest with no oxygen. But Jimmy Butler didn't care. He went out and dropped a 40-point triple-double without hitting a single three. And in the fourth quarter, after scoring a tough bucket on LeBron James, the guy who had been to almost every finals for a decade, Jimmy looked him dead in the eye and said, "You're in trouble."
Jimmy, first I just wanted to clarify. It looked like you said you're in trouble. Is that what you said?
That is what I said.
Okay.
Just think about that. Short-handed, outmatched on the biggest stage, and trash-talking one of the greatest of all time. What makes this even crazier is that Jimmy fully believed it. In the 2023 NBA playoffs, the 8th-seeded Miami Heat went up against the 1st-seeded Milwaukee Bucks, the best regular season team in the league, and Jimmy Butler didn't back down for a second. He put up insane performances, completely tore them apart, and led Miami to one of the biggest upsets in NBA history, becoming just the 6th number 8 seed ever to take down a number 1 seed. And to make it even better, he looked them straight in the eye and said, "I own you." He didn't just beat the best team in the league, he trash-talked them, embarrassed them, and made sure they knew it. Jimmy Butler isn't in the NBA to make friends. He doesn't beg for help. He doesn't team up with other superstars. And the reason he's been criticized, the reason he's bounced around the league, is because not every team is built for his mentality. He brings it every single possession. When I think of guys with the Mamba mentality, I need to look at guys and watch guys that play every possession, not every minute, but every second. And Butler falls under that category.
He brings it every single possession. And see, when I think of guys with the Mamba mentality, I need to look at guys and watch guys that play every possession, not every minute, but every second. And Jimmy falls under that category.
This is the dog factor. You won't find it on a box score. You won't see it in any advanced analytics. And honestly, numbers can't even quantify it. But whatever it is, Jimmy has it in spades. And yet NBA teams look at his 17.55 stat line and think nothing special. That's why time and time again they let him walk. Here's a clip of Allen Iverson, an NBA superstar from over 2 decades ago, responding to a reporter asking if going to practice would make his teammates better. How the hell can I make my teammates better by practicing?
I make my teammates better by practicing.
NBA players probably get the idea of making their teammates better on a surface level, but do they really understand it on a DNA level? Kobe Bryant had every move on offense and was a lockdown defender, but even he admitted there was one more level to his game. Not a skill, not better footwork, but making his teammates better. Once I realized that my goal really is to be the best player I can be, and then what that means is helping my teammates be the best players that they can be. And once I figured that out, then my game went to another level.
Once I realized that my goal really is to be the best player I can be, and then what that means helping my teammates be the best players that they can be. And once I figured that out, then my game went to another level.
It's not always an assist on the box score. It's not necessarily a +1 in the plus-minus department. But the impact is real. For a first-hand example, just look at Jimmy Butler's time with Miami Heat. For the first 2 seasons, Bam Adebayo was just a decent role player putting up mediocre numbers at best. Then in 2020, when Jimmy arrived, Bam suddenly became a double-double machine, an all-star, and one of the best defensive players in the NBA. He raised the level of play around people. He makes you play harder. He just makes you care a little bit more.
He raised the level of play around people. Yes, sir. He make you play harder. He just make you care a little bit more.
Then after Jimmy moved to Golden State, look at what happened to Steph Curry. Before Jimmy arrived, whispers of Steph slowing down were growing louder, but now he's setting defenses on fire again. The fact is, Jimmy Butler elevates his teammates. There's no stat for this, no flashy metric, nothing the NBA can measure, but the proof is in his track record. And if that's not the essence of an MVP, then what is? If there's one thing to learn from Jimmy Butler, it's this: never let numbers define who you are. Think about it. What was your GPA in school? How many followers do you have? What's your net worth? We live in a world where numbers seem to decide everything: your intelligence, your status, your worth. But here's the thing. Numbers don't measure heart, they don't measure resilience, they don't measure the fire inside you. If they did, Jimmy Butler wouldn't be where he is right now, because by the numbers, he was never supposed to be this guy. An unranked recruit out of high school, the last pick in the first round of the NBA draft, traded, doubted, overlooked again and again. And yet at every stop, he's rewritten the narrative, because as Jimmy keeps showing us, numbers don't define you. Only you define yourself.